What's up, truckers? Welcome back to Young Diesel Trucking Reacts. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button because we're about to dive into some news that could change everything for every single one of us out here on the road. Now, before we get started, I need you to pay attention because what I'm about to tell you, it's something that's been building for years. Something that's cost us drivers millions of dollars, countless hours of downtime, and put our lives at risk. But today, something changed. You know that feeling when you're cruising down the interstate, maybe you're running a hot load, deadline's tight, and suddenly that dreaded DF warning light comes on. Your heart sinks because you know what's coming next. Your truck's about to become a 40-ton paperweight crawling at 5 miles per hour. Well, guys, I've got news that's going to blow your mind, and I mean blow your mind. The EPA just made an announcement that could save every single driver watching this video thousands of dollars and potentially their lives. But first, let me paint you a picture of just how bad this DF nightmare has been. Picture this, you're driving through the middle of nowhere, Nevada. It's 2 a.m., you're 200 miles from the nearest truck stop, and wham, DF fault. Your 500 horsepower Detroit suddenly has the power of a lawnmower. You're now crawling at 5 mph on a highway where traffic is doing 80. This isn't just inconvenient, brothers. This is dangerous. This is life-threatening, and it's been happening to drivers across America for years. I remember talking to a driver just last month. This guy, independent operator, been driving for 20 years. He got hit with a deaf fault outside of Phoenix, had to call a tow truck. You know what that cost him? $3,500, $3,500. That's rent money, that's food on the table for his family, that's his kids' Christmas presents. Gone. Because his DF system decided to have a bad day, and it gets worse. These DF faults, they don't just happen when it's convenient. They don't wait for you to be parked at a truck stop with a Freightliner dealership next door. No, they happen when you're in the middle of the Mojave Desert. They happen when you're crossing the Rocky Mountains in a blizzard. They happen when you're already running late on a load that could make or break your relationship with a customer. But here's where it gets really infuriating. Most of the time, and I mean most of the time, there's nothing actually wrong with your emission system. It's a sensor glitch, it's a software bug, it's the DEF fluid being too cold or too hot, or the system just having a bad day, but the truck doesn't care. The computer says derate, so you get derated. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Diesel, the environment, we need these systems. And you're right, I'm not anti-environment. None of us want to be rolling coal and poisoning the air our kids breathe. But there's got to be a balance between protecting the environment and not destroying the livelihoods of the people who literally keep America running. And that's where today's announcement comes in. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldon just dropped some news that has me more excited than a new driver getting their first truck. The EPA is now mandating that manufacturers update their DEF system software to prevent trucks from being derated to those dangerous 5 mph speeds. Let that sink in for a minute. The EPA, the same agency that's been the source of so much frustration for drivers, just listened to us. They listened to our complaints, they looked at the data, and they said, you know what? This isn't working. This is dangerous and we need to fix it. But how did we get here? How did we go from the EPA being seen as the enemy of truckers to them actually looking out for us? It started with drivers like you, drivers who refused to stay quiet, farmers who couldn't get their equipment to the field because of DEF faults, construction workers who couldn't complete projects because their machinery was stuck in limp mode. The small business owners, the independent operators, the backbone of American commerce finally got heard. The Small Business Administration got involved. They started documenting the economic impact. And when I say economic impact, I'm talking millions of dollars in lost productivity, millions of dollars that came right out of the pockets of hardworking Americans. Think about it. Every time a truck gets derated to 5 mph, that driver loses money. The shipper loses money because their freight is late. The receiver loses money because their production line shuts down waiting for parts. It's a ripple effect that touches every single person in America, whether they know it or not. But here's what really gets me fired up about this announcement. It's not just about the money, it's about safety. When your truck suddenly drops to 5 mph on a busy highway, you become a rolling roadblock. Cars are flying past you at 70, 80 mph and you're barely moving. That's a recipe for disaster. I've heard from drivers who've had close calls, 18-wheelers coming up behind them at full speed, not expecting to see a truck barely crawling in the right lane. Semi-drivers having to swerve into other lanes to avoid rear-ending a derated truck. It's chaos, and it's been happening for years. But the manufacturers, they had their hands tied. The EPA regulations were crystal clear. If there's a DEF fault, you derate the engine. Period. No exceptions. Didn't matter if it was a life-threatening situation. Didn't matter if the driver was in the middle of nowhere. The computer said derate, so the truck got derated. Now, with this new guidance, manufacturers have the flexibility to write software that keeps trucks operational at safer speeds while still maintaining environmental compliance. Instead of dropping to 5 mph, maybe the truck runs at reduced power but can still maintain highway speeds to get to a safe location for repairs. This is huge, guys. This is the kind of common sense regulation that we've been begging for. It acknowledges that yes, we need to protect the environment, but we also need to protect the drivers who are out here risking their lives to keep America's supply chain moving. And let me tell you something about the timing of this announcement. It couldn't have come at a better time. With supply chain issues, driver shortages, and everything else we've been dealing with, the last thing we needed was trucks randomly deciding to turn into snails in the middle of critical deliveries. But this change isn't just about fixing the derate issue, it's about respect. It's about the EPA finally acknowledging that truck drivers aren't the enemy. We're not out here trying to destroy the environment. We're hardworking Americans trying to make a living and keep this country running. For too long, it felt like regulations were written by people who had never spent a day behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler. People who didn't understand what it's like to be 500 miles from home when your truck decides to throw a DEF code. This new guidance shows that the EPA is finally starting to listen to the real-world experiences of drivers. They're starting to understand that good environmental policy doesn't have to come at the expense of safety and economic survival. Now, I want to be clear about something. This doesn't mean we're going back to the old days of rolling coal and ignoring emissions. The environmental standards are still there. The DEF systems are still required. What's changing is how those systems respond when there's a fault. Instead of the nuclear option of complete derate, we're moving toward a more nuanced approach. Think of it like this. If your check engine light comes on in your personal vehicle, your car doesn't immediately drop to 5 mph. It might run a little rough, it might have reduced power, but it stays drivable so you can get to a mechanic safely. That's what we're moving toward with these DEF system updates. Smart software that can distinguish between a real environmental threat and a minor sensor glitch. Software that prioritizes safety while still maintaining emissions compliance. And here's the beautiful part. This isn't just going to help new trucks. The guidance applies to existing vehicles too. That means if you're driving a 2018 Peterbilt or a 2020 Kenworth, you could potentially get a software update that prevents future derate nightmares. Now, I know some of you are wondering about the details. When will these updates be available? How do you get them? Will they be free? These are all great questions, and honestly, we're still waiting for more information from the manufacturers. But here's what I can tell you. This is a mandatory guidance from the EPA. That means manufacturers have to comply. They don't have a choice. So whether you're driving a Freightliner, a Peterbilt, a Kenworth, a Volvo, or any other brand, your manufacturer is going to have to develop and deploy these software updates. The timeline is still being worked out, but I expect we'll start seeing these updates rolling out in the coming months. And my advice, as soon as they're available for your truck, get them. Don't wait. Don't put it off. This could be the difference between a profitable run and a financial disaster, but this announcement represents something bigger than just DEF systems. It represents a shift in how regulations are developed and implemented. It shows that when drivers speak up, when we organize, when we make our voices heard, change is possible. For years, we felt like we were fighting an uphill battle against regulations that seem designed to make our lives harder. But this announcement proves that the system can work, that regulators can listen to feedback and make adjustments that benefit everyone. This is why it's so important for drivers to stay engaged, to stay informed, and to speak up when policies don't make sense. Your voice matters, your experience matters, and today's announcement is proof of that. So what's next? Well, we wait for the manufacturers to start rolling out these updates. We stay informed about the implementation timeline, and we celebrate the fact that common sense prevailed in Washington for once. But more importantly, we remember this moment. We remember that when truckers unite, when we speak with one voice, we can create change. We can make the roads safer, we can protect our livelihoods, and we can ensure that the people who keep America moving are treated with the respect they deserve. That's going to wrap up today's video, but before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you been hit with a DF derate? What was your experience? How much did it cost you? Drop your stories in the comments below, because every story matters and every experience helps build the case for continued improvements. If this video helped you understand what's happening with DEF regulations, smash that like button. If you want to stay up to date on all the latest trucking news and regulations, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Until next time, keep the shiny side up and the greasy side down. This has been Young Diesel Trucking Reacts, and I'll see you on the road.